going to speak to you about the future of conversational interface. You always know it's going to be some good waffle when we're talking about the future. And how we get there, which is the bit that's not going to be quite so waffly. Because what I want to do is provide some very, very specific details about what it is that we need to do to get a good conversational interface. So specifically, this is having good RESTful APIs. It's having good programming and development interfaces that allow you to develop these conversational tools and these conversational interfaces. It's about having a solid basis in text first and then moving that on to conversational voice. It's about having great UX-driven conversational design, so not just your graphic design, but your conversational design as well. And then it's also getting the nomenclature, the vocabulary, and the accents right when you're doing the voice recognition. And finally, to really propel it, it's about getting self-learning, self-correcting training. Now, let's start off with, anyone remember this? See if this works. Why do I keep doing this?
Oh, do we need to plug in?
I plugged in. Is it turned on? Actually, should have checked that it's turned on. Should have checked. Oh no, it's on. Yeah.
It's okay. Perhaps the professor could use your computer. Please.
Computer? Computer? Ah. Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
Keyboard? How quaint.
Oh, now I can't get it to stop. Right. I don't know if anyone remember the old Star Trek film. Oh, but this has always been, voice has always been what we've imagined with computers. So that's sort of that point in the clip. Has everyone seen that clip? Has everyone seen that Star Trek film? Some people haven't. Amazing. I thought everyone in the world should have known. But anyways, first, let me tell you just a little bit about myself. My name's Ben Waymark. I work for a company called Webio. We do conversational interfaces, and we started off as a conversational middleware company. Now what we do is we focus specifically on the credit and collections industry, working with customer-focused credit and collection. So what happened back in the old days, credit and collection was usually about coming in with a court order and a baseball bat. You'd sort of get your money. Now where debt's sort of everywhere, it's much more customer-focused. There's a lot of retailers that are wanting to sustain long-term credit relationships with customers who they're enabling to buy things that they otherwise wouldn't be able to buy. And companies like Aveiro, formerly Littlewoods, and in the UK is one of our big customers. They're a good example of that sort of model. About me, let's talk about Walter Ong. Has anyone heard of Walter Ong? No one? Okay, so Walter Ong was a Jesuit. And he was a Jesuit scholar who wrote a book in 1982 called Orality and Literacy. Really interesting book, and what he did is he traced what happens amongst different cultures and difference in the world, and it was sort of a good lifetime's work that he got to do this. And he talks about pre-oral societies pre-literate societies or oral societies where everything is done through memorization, everything's done through rote. And if you kind of heard in any old sort of holy texts and old epic poems, there's always a lot of begatting and who came from who. And these were all built around mnemonic devices that people used in order to remember things. Then what happens is writing happens, and everything sort of changes. Suddenly, all the begatting can get written down and it's not memorized. And then the rules, the laws, everything in the society becomes a lot more static because things are written down, because you have a permanent record of them. Then what he traces is what he calls secondary orality. And a secondary oral society is where you have the writing, but what you do is you use the writing to make orality better. So examples we would see in this would be in plays, in radio, even in music and all that. So we have a sort of a secondary orality where things are being transmitted oral, but they're being transmitted orally in a written society. Now, this is all very interesting, except how does it fit in with conversation? Well, I believe that conversational interface, we're going to see the same sort of flow happen with computing. So we start off with computers that we have input devices, and I'll talk a bit about that too. We get into talking, and then eventually what we start doing is making a interface, a conversational interface that becomes a way of programming a computer. But it's not engineers programming computers, it's people having conversations with the computer, just like they do on Star Trek, and any of the Star Treks if you've watched them, where you're asking the computer questions, you're asking it to do things, and you don't need to be an engineer. So sorry everyone, in another 500 years, that could be it for our job. So why conversational? The main reason why I believe so passionately in conversational comes with the Alexa. And when the Alexa came out, everybody got one, and everybody wanted one, and they wanted it because they wanted it to work. Now, has anyone here used Alexa much? Does anyone here like it a lot?
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple? Because what happens is...
You need help.
Loads of people get Alexas.
It works for the same three things every morning.
Well, this is it. This is exactly the point. It works great for those same three things. It works great when you get up in the morning and you say, in fact, I just tell my Alexa good morning and all the lights come on and then you hear the dogs jumping up and down and you realize you have to get out of bed. But when it gets more complicated than that, it kind of falls over and it doesn't sort of live up to that dream. And it doesn't live up to the dream because all you're doing is you're barking commands into it. So you're sort of, when you have that sort of Walter Wrong dream, or that Walter Wrong talks about the secondary literacy, all that, you're not really getting that. All you're doing is doing the job of a keyboard and putting that into Alexa. And this is what we've always had. Anyone ever used programming cards? See, I never did. My older sister did a computer science class and she had them. I was so jealous of her. I thought those were the coolest things. We only had stupid keyboards when I had it. But we've been through a succession of input devices. But every time we've gone by, it always sort of leading to the same thing. Because you start off with the cards, which is sort of a way of writing commands to a computer. Then you get into a joystick, which is a way of pushing something around. And then you get to a keyboard where you're typing out those commands. And pretty soon, like with the keyboard, you went from sort of programming, doing things around, to they start coming out with languages like BASIC that were going to make it really easy for everyone to interact. And it's kind of a first attempt at being conversational. And then since then, we've gone through all the generations of different languages and of object-oriented. And all the input devices we have all helped us have a bit more of a conversational flow with their computers. But it's never been great. And there's a few reasons, and one of the big reasons is interoperability. Because we've had up to, and it's easy to forget that because of where we are now, but it used to be really difficult to get devices talking to each other. Now, I was so cool in high school. I had my dad's Radio Shack TRS-80 Model 100, which I would sit taking notes, and everyone just hated me. And I would take all my notes, and I'd bring it home, and then I would plug that into, I think it was our Mac SE, and then in our Mac SE, there's a COM cable that you could use. And I can't remember if I had to use a modem or not, but I remember having to set parity and bit rate and a few other things, and then you'd sort of send it over. I think it was through FTP, but I'm not even 100% sure now. And that was the only way you could get two different devices to communicate. But from there, really quickly, internet, Usenet started, the old alt groups, that type of thing started happening. Then you had Mac and IBM agreed that they could read each other's disk formats. That got really exciting. And then universities are all connected on different networks. Anyone use Archie or Veronica to search things on Usenet? Yeah, there we go. So yeah, some of the old systems, so you do that around. And then out comes Netscape in 94, I think it was, or in the early 90s anyways. Netscape comes out, really shows what can be done with that HTTP and now HTTPS interface, which then brings us to the RESTful APIs. And I know we've been talking a lot about the RESTful APIs, but these have been a great way that we've managed to get this interoperability. We've managed to get, doesn't matter what language you're using, doesn't matter what your operating system is, none of that matters. If you have RESTful APIs, if you can read an HTTPS protocol coming in and serve some HTTPS, usually in a JSON file or something coming out, kind of anything can talk to anything. And that's great, and that builds a lot of what we need to do this conversation. But we still have the problem that context matters. And I was really interested to hear about the V cards and talking about context there, because it is such a big thing. when I ask when I use a RESTful API to connect to my Alexa, so that I can ask my Alexa when the next bus is, and the Alexa connects to the Dublin bus service, which has an open API and tells me, all that only works in context. It has to know that who I am, it has to know what bus I'm looking for, it has to know where I am, if it wants to even have a chance of being conversational. Now we have other tools that do context as well. There's cookies. Data science has been doing a lot. My last job, we had a whole data science team, and they did a lot of research in digital twinning, which was quite interesting. This is in the context of a travel company, where you would be looking for flights, and they would detect the pattern, and they'd see other patterns on the same thing. If you were a single person flying as a single flight in the middle of the week, after I think it was every 7 flights or something, the chances are you're going to book 1 or 2 holidays, either a family holiday or a romantic holiday, and it will be on a weekend. And so that kind of context is great for when you're doing the conversation, because when you're asking your Alexa or your whatever your interface is, where should I book my next holiday, it can get the context of, here's somebody who's been traveling a lot, who's got someone at home who's really jealous because he's traveling at home a lot, who keeps complaining about how nice Portugal is and she doesn't get there. Better book something that'll be a really nice holiday, smooth everything over a bit. So context is very important, and it's very difficult as well. And it's difficult for a very simple example of, if I say to my Alexa, how much is a flight to Paris? That's fair, it can know where I am, it can geolocate somehow. Then I say, what's the weather like there? And that would be the next step. It says, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Then I ask, do I need a visa? Now what you have is you have the problem where you sort of have some of the context, but when I'm saying visa, does that mean a visa to travel to Paris? Because my British passport doesn't let me go to Europe anymore. Or does that mean, can I pay for that flight on a visa? And this is the sort of, the key to getting this working is to work out what the context is, make a guess when you can, and then when you can't guess, it's fairly simple, you ask for confirmation, which is something that happens in the course of any conversation. I go to the cab drivers, I like to go to the Mia Hotel, and they look at me and they go, and then I repeat it 7 times, and then eventually bring out a piece of paper and we confirm what hotel I'm going to. Now, this is a great example. So this is from a company in America called Houndify. Nothing to do with us, sadly. But this is a great example of what you can do with a bit of context.
What's the interest rate on a new savings account?
The current annual percentage yield is 0.3% on a new savings account.
Are there any fees for opening one?
There are no fees when opening a new savings account.
What about a minimum opening deposit?
There is a minimum opening deposit of $25 to open a new savings account.
Is there an ATM on the corner of First and Market Street?
Yes.
So that's a really good example of what you could do context. And it goes by and it shows a few other examples there. And if anybody wants, I can share that link after. It's a YouTube that they put out. It shows what you can do when you have that bit of context, but there's still a massive mountain to climb before we can really make conversational something that even begins to be really, sort of really usable and really exciting. And really, a lot of this, how much time have I got?
You got 5.
5 minutes. Cool. So the big mountain to climb comes in usability. Now, I think this usability actually starts with the usability with the tools, because trying to build great conversations is really difficult when you have to go on to something like the IBM Watson interface. And every single step of the conversation, you're having to pull and push and wait for it to reload. So really, if we're going to climb this mountain, we have to get over the usability. First in the tools, and then once we get the tools that are really good, then what we have to do is actually make the conversation themselves really good. Now, another bit that really that we have to get well is the voice and the voice recognition. Now, this is something that has been absolutely hammering it over the last 5 or 6 years. I was at another job. I was working with a company in China, and we were negotiating a contract over WeChat using voice recognition and automatic translation, and it was absolutely incredible that we could be sitting in an office, say something in English, they would then reply in Chinese, that would come back, and the translation and the voice transcribing was so good that we were actually able to do that. Now, they had a bit of knowledge of English. We had some people who spoke Mandarin in the office, and that did help, but really it was amazing how far you could go. And what we're seeing with this voice transcription is that people are using it a lot more. My daughter, terrible speller, she's 17 now, but when she was a kid, she was a terrible speller. And I noticed when she started sending texts, they started getting better and better. Until one day we're sort of sitting around watching TV, and she sort of says a random word into her phone, and I said, oh, what's that? She goes, oh, it's easier just to say it than to spell it. And I truly think she's never going to learn how to spell. She doesn't need to. She could just, kind of reminded me back when I was a kid and I had the calculator watch. Mm-hmm. And you can't just carry a calculator around everywhere you go, which apparently we all do. But yeah, so getting that voice recognition is getting good. It does need to get a lot better. And then the problem is always going to be with the interface. So has anyone ever programmed for either on Watson or for Alexa? Anyone seen their interface? Yeah, so if you've seen it, it's there, it's all right, it's getting better all the time. But there hasn't been a runaway app with Alexa. There hasn't been anything that's sort of taken the world and said, this is it. Even my app that did, which I sure was going to be big, Viking poetry. It just didn't happen. And part of the reason why is with the interface so difficult, it gets it difficult to make the conversations just right. Now, KLM, I don't know if anyone's aware of this with KLM, but they did a huge amount of research and a lot of publicity around everything they did to do conversation. And they did it, they did it well. They did absolutely everything they could. They had agents that were automatically generating things that they would say, and then they were pressing it so they could train it and got all the data. Still, the interface ended up really clunky. Still, what you ended up with is if you book a flight with KLM, you're more likely to get a button-driven menu thing just because it works better. Now, there's tools out there. One of my favorites is If This Then That, which is just sort of a home automation sort of fun tool that you could get. There's loads of things. But there's tools like that are making it better. But we're still more in, if anyone remembers Microsoft front page for the web, we're still about at that level. We haven't got to the bit now where some genius with Photoshop can design your page, move all the elements around, and then you build it. And really, that's where we need to get to with the interface, with what the programmers are using. Then what we can do, and if you're interested in this, Erica Hall did a brilliant book on conversational design. Because then what you do is you can then have the tools that allow you to design. You break down the conversation, you break it down into bricks. You have a brick for doing an identification and verification, you have a brick for doing a payment. You break it down into bricks, and then you can sort of put all those bricks together and you design them, you test them, and then you keep designing and then keep testing it. And of course, has anyone seen this? This is one of my, I don't know why this is. Anyone Scottish?
What's the buttons?
No, they installed voice recognition technology and it's left the hell of it.
Voice recognition technology in a lift in Scotland. You ever tried voice recognition technology?
No.
They don't do Scottish accents.
I won't go through the whole thing. It's really worth watching.
Except
How do I get this to?
11.
I'll send that link around as well. It's definitely worth watching. It's quite funny. But yeah, so it's getting all those accents right. It's getting the terms right. But then for the long term, what you also have to do is have a way of being able to have unguided learning, because all the terms, everything that we use, changes quickly. I mean, it's amazing if you hear a recording of yourself from even 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you'd be amazed at how different the things that you say, the words that we say, words that come up into into the nomenclature, into the vocabulary, into everything come and go in every industry. So what you need to do is you need to have this, you need to get the accents right, you need to get all the regional terms, and then you need to kind of be able to catch them contextually when they start changing. And then you bring that all together, and you bring that together and you get your interoperability, you get your voice recognition, you get your natural language generation, and actually, do you know what? I skipped over that slide, but that is another key bit when you're designing a conversation, is the generation. One of the things that makes Alexa so frustrating is that if you ask Alexa to turn your bedroom light on, and it says, sorry, that device doesn't work, and then you ask it again, it says, sorry, that device doesn't work, and it will keep doing that. And that's not how people speak. You have to say, sorry, that doesn't work. No, it's broken, mate. Yeah, it's still not working. No, you're really going to have to try something else. That's going to be a lot less frustrating than having it just repeat the same line over and over. But getting that natural language generation that has all the variations that you get in conversation is very important. Then it's having that context, it's knowing who the speaker is and how we can go through that, getting the accents and everything right. And really, where this all comes together, I think, is going to be in conversational customer service. Because in conversational customer service, and this is why it's been the big focus for Webio, is that you start with doing an ID&V. Whenever somebody starts a conversation, you have to confirm where they are. And that means that we already have a bit of that context. It also means you get additional contextual information through CRM, through a debt management system, through whatever systems they have that are containing that customer information. And then what you can do is you can also work out what their intent is, because it's quite easy when somebody's calling, especially somebody calling the customer service, whether it's about debt or something else, very quickly becomes apparent what it is that they're looking for. So that means that you can build these conversational bricks and you can test these conversational bricks around very specific outcomes. And then there's clear commercial goals. You can build this and say we want to make sure our net promoter score is this, or we want to upsell or cross-sell, or whatever your goals are. You can sort of build in what those metrics are, and you can really work out how to make the system better and how you can prove that the system you're making is a lot better. So, in conclusion, the key to making that great conversational system is going to be in good RESTful APIs. It's going to be good programming and development tools. It's going to be a solid basis in conversational text. And then from there, we move that on to voice. You get and keep context. You have great UX-driven conversational tools. Get the vocabulary and the accents right. And then you have the self-learning and self-correcting. And what I expect is that in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see a lot of these different elements coming together, and then we'll see that conversational interface get better and better.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ben.
Yeah.